Good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special online event with me, Mark Pougatch, together with OBE and my old friend Jonathan Overend and his brilliant production team at 9419. We put together series 2 of Inside the Tour, a podcast series reliving the tales of the Ashes in 86-87, one of the best, most extraordinary, most entertaining cricket tours told by those who were there, both from an English perspective, an Australian perspective, and I was there as a teenage backpacker, so there's a bit of that in there as well. If you have listened to it so far, I hope you're enjoying it. If you haven't, do download it. All 8 episodes are there now at Auddy, AUDDY, to download now, and I think you'll really enjoy the stories. Thank you for tuning in. We are on 3 Twitter feeds as we speak. We're on my own, at Mark Pougatch. We are at Inside Tour Pod, and most importantly, the Twitter feed of our friends and partners tonight at Prostate Cancer UK. Their handle is at Prostate UK, at Prostate UK. We're delighted to team up with them this evening on account of the diagnosis of one of our most treasured guests of Inside the Tour, the legendary England batsman Allan Lamb, who joins us this evening from home. Allan, good evening. How are you feeling?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Mark. I had good news last week. Got the all clear. So my PSA after the blood test had come down from 8 to 0.3. So it's definitely working. So, fingers crossed it keeps going that way. I think probably when I had the treatment, I didn't really feel too much having the treatment. But I think a few of the after effects are coming now, especially the hormone tablets I have to take each day. But, the big thing, the treatment's worked and, no turning back. We'll keep attacking.
Well, that's brilliant, Allan. That couldn't be a better early Christmas present for you. So that's great to hear. Please, all of you at home, if you're at home, you're out jogging, you're out walking the dog, you're in your car, when it's safe, obviously, contribute to the discussion via the chat function on the screen and by sending a message to the Twitter feed that you're connected to. As many questions as possible to put to our guests. We've got Allan with us. We're going to have Gladstone Small later, who played such a key role in winning the Ashes in 86-87. He took the winning catch at the MCG and then threw the ball into the crowd, which wasn't a good idea. We're going to hear from Alec Stewart, who played with Allan for England, captain England in the Ashes, of course. And we're also joined live from Sydney. He's got up very early for us. The man who was the editor of the Cricket Bible, Wisden, and journalist for the Daily Mail, Lawrence Booth, who's in quarantine in Australia at 5:03 in the morning. Lawrence, thank you for getting up. How is it in Oz?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. Well, it's dark outside at the moment. You'll be surprised to hear. That's probably is a slight representation of England's mood as well after the first test. So they've got a lot to put right ahead of the second game in Adelaide later this week. And yes, a sobering start, as it so often is at Brisbane, unfortunately.
Lawrence, the reason you and I do what we do is because we weren't good enough to do what Allan does and take mid and leg for England or play up front for England or whatever. So I'm going to embarrass you in front of Allan. You are a Northants man through and through. Mr. Lamb is one of your heroes.
I can't deny it. I do remember the 86-87 Ashes just about, but the series I first really got into as a sort of obsessive fan back home was the 89-90 tour of the Caribbean. And of course, Allan began that series with the famous 100 in Jamaica. England won their first team to win there for goodness knows how many years. And then he got another 100 in Barbados. And England actually deserved to win that series. They lost 2-1 because in the third test at Trinidad, West Indies slowed the over rate right down. Curtly Ambrose started tying up his shoelaces. They bowled 8 overs an hour. England weren't able to knock off the runs. But somehow in that series, Allan's batting kind of got hold of me, and I started supporting Northamptonshire, and it never stopped. So it probably was a pretty good Northants team in those days. Fallen away slightly since then, but yeah, always followed Lammy very closely since then.
And his flashing Slazenger as well. I have to show you, Allan. I'm sorry, but I've got my teenage Grey Nichols here. I was a Grey Nichols man. The factory was just up the road from my home in Sussex, so we were always a bit Grey Nichols in our house. Alan, reaction to the first test. I think the most frustrating thing is that probably no one's that surprised about how the test match at the Gabba unfolded, are they?
No, first of all, Lawrence, thanks for those kind words. I'm glad you're a Northampton supporter. It was probably the only county I played for. I didn't play for anyone else. So they must have done something, or I did something to them that they refused me to leave. So we ended our career, started our career and ended our career. But no, there was a great bunch of guys who came from Northampton, some talented players too. Yeah, talking about the test match, it's always a hard one. Brisbane, I remember I stepped in as captain and for Graham Gooch, and I think if I'm right, we got 100 and I can't remember, but I don't know if anyone can remember that, but I'm not too sure if I put them in or we batted first. So, but
we'll look it up. This is in 1990, 4 years later, isn't it?
Yeah. So, anyway, it was one of these that, I was in fairly good nick, with all the build-up games, and it came to it, and we were fairly confident, and we got rolled over. And it was very hard to pick it back up. We went down 4-0, that's how important that the Brisbane Test match is. And as Lawrence was saying, and I can't believe it, England have not batted properly in outside nets, and the middle is the only place you get practice. And if you can't do that, surely with a wicket green like that, and listen, I love Joe and how he plays his game, but they read it so wrong. First of all, with the toss, and then with the side they picked. I mean, Broad ties up Warner every time, and we don't even play. All we had was the same sort of ping pong attack. I mean, Wood is not. Wood, you got to keep him for a quick wicket like Perth or something like that. But the other wickets are not, and the wicket was not quick, Lawrence, because they had so much rain and the preparation wasn't that good. So we've got a lot of work to do. And playing Leach, I mean, that's another. I mean, gee, the guy hadn't bowled. I mean, you've got to go in with your 4 seamers, 5 seamers, and
hard to argue with it. By the way, interestingly, in 1990, Australia won the toss, Alan. Interesting. Put you in. You were out for 194. You had a first innings lead. You bowled them out for 152.
Yeah.
Couldn't follow it up. You were out for 114, and they had 150 to win, and Taylor and Marsh knocked them off. So interestingly, they did put England in there. But obviously, Lawrence, Nasser Hussain's ghost was hanging over Joe Root, wasn't it, with the decision?
Yeah. I think that's partly what happened. I mean, Root insisted after the game that he'd made the right decision, that he'd make it again. Well, that's doubling. That's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Sort of repeating the same mistake, expecting a different result. It was tailor-made conditions, an underprepared surface because of the weather that'd been around on the Gold Coast for the previous fortnight. There was grass on the pitch. England had a chance to get into that series if they'd taken early wickets against Australia's lineup. And of course, wouldn't you know it, the second day dawned absolutely beautiful. It was a batting day. And Australia were lucky in that they didn't have to bat in that third session on the first day when it was still pretty cloudy and grey. The rain washed it out. Now, who knows what would have happened if England had got 20 overs in that night. They may have taken 3 wickets. It may have been different. But we often come to the end of a Brisbane game and say, it might have been different if we'd done X, Y, and Z. And it just isn't, because Australia outplayed England, essentially. Leach was probably a bad selection. The absence of Broad was weird. They'll put that right for the second test. Milan and Root had a good partnership in the second innings, but they were so far behind on the first that, England needed 500 really second time round to make a game of it, and it didn't happen. So I'm afraid we've been here before. In fact, it's not since 86, 87 that England have won at Brisbane. Since then, it's been 7 defeats out of 9, so it's a traditional graveyard for the England team.
Yeah. And of course, Alan, as you also memorably told us on our podcast, Inside the Tour, you won in Brisbane, but you got to Brisbane in interesting style because you'd enjoyed yourself so much in the run-up to Brisbane. But at least you'd played lots of matches in Australia before you got to Brisbane, even if the results hadn't been great. At least you played lots of cricket.
Yeah. The big thing, it's so important. I always said when we sort of, in the 90s, we said to the sides, you must go out and you've got to play against 4 Shield games. Forget about the Prime Minister's 11 and someone else's a Bunbury 11 or something like that. That doesn't work, So I think but I think what's happened, they've compacted these tours so much now that there's no time to play all these games. But it's amazing when Australia come here, they play against all the counties. So I don't know what's going on. I think Australia will be pulling the wool over our eyes. And going back to that side, they have to open with Crawley. Crawley, listen, has had his bad times, but let me tell you what, he is a class player, and I think he's got to open the batting. Burns is not going to get a run.
Well, Lawrence Burns is going to play in Adelaide, isn't he? I don't think anyone's saying it's last chance, but if he fails twice in Adelaide, then what Allan is saying could come closer to being reality, couldn't it? Crawley to replace him at the top of the order.
Well, I mean, Crawley should have been playing in the first place. I mean, the guy got a bit brainwashed when he had, those small scores and that, But I mean, I think the guy, everyone has told me this guy has the best talent out of them all. And we just leave him out. Put him in the firing line. Let's keep him going. But I mean, having a look at our openers, the Aussies are licking their lips.
Lawrence, a word on that?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, Rory had a difficult start, didn't he, to the first test. Rolled behind his legs first ball by Mitchell Stark. It looked like a leg stump half volley, didn't it? I think under normal circumstances he might have flicked it before, but the nerves took over and he moved across his stumps and then
it sort of fell over, really. Yeah,
and out for 13 second time round. So he does need runs in Adelaide. That's true.
Let's bring in a man who's going to defend him quite rightly, Rory Burns. Alec Stewart is joining us, of course, former England captain, lots of test series to his name against Australia, played with Allan, of course. Alec, thank you very much indeed. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Hope you're all well as well. So hopefully this is working. I'm not the best IT man or the tech man, but hopefully you can see or hear me.
Are as good as a square cut. So well done. We're talking about Rory Burns, so let me bowl you a bouncer straight away and tell us that what you're, obviously you know extremely well because of Surrey, what you're thinking his mindset will be going to Adelaide.
Yeah, listen, he's had a bad test match. He can't hide behind that. I've exchanged messages with him since the test, but he's one of the most mentally strong and robust cricketers I know. It's not the first time he's had a first baller. We've all had first ballers at whatever level of cricket we play. So, yes, he was nervous. You have to remember, and Lammy may agree, that when you play Australia for the very, very first time, the nerves are greater than ever, even though he's played a number of test matches. But Australia for the first time for him. And that's why I just got the end of what you boys were saying. He got in a tangle with his foot movements with that very, very first ball. But what I will say, I think 6 test matches ago, he was player of the series against New Zealand. We're always going to look at his technique when it doesn't work because it is a pretty unique method. When he is in sync with how he is playing, at the point of contact, when the bowler lets go of the ball, he is in a good position. When he's slightly out of sync, obviously it looks horrendous. But I'm going to sit here and back him for this next test match. One, because I know him. One, because I know how mentally strong he is. And I know how hard he will be working between the end of that Brisbane test and the start of Adelaide. And then the knock-on effect is you suddenly become a better player when you're out the side. I think we were talking about Crawley just as I came onto the call. Similar people who may be calling for him now were also calling for him to be dropped 3 or 4 test matches ago. So he can't have it always. To me, I think, going back to Trevor Bayliss's thing, you're better off giving someone 1 test match too many than 1 test match too few. And he is the 3rd most senior batsman in that inexperienced lineup behind Root and behind Stokes. So that's my case for Rory Burns.
And it's a very well-made case, Alec. And also it is the case, isn't it, that they are so, I mean, the openers have had a tiny bit more batting, but they are so short of middle practice because of, in no particular order, COVID, the T20 World Cup, the worldwide emphasis on white ball cricket, not necessarily the ECB, and then, of course, the weather.
And that's been the thing. Again, we'll all agree on this, that you can play as well as you want in the nets, but you can't beat centre wicket practice and game time. And it was a reasonably well-planned pre-start of the Ashes tour, because of the circumstances you just mentioned, sending the Ashes squad who weren't involved with a white ball team out early. You had the Lions out there. The idea was to play, I think I'm right in saying there were going to be 2 games amongst themselves leading into the test match. You can't get to play first-class cricket now, or it's difficult to, especially in these COVID times. So the weather won out. So they did go in definitely undercooked. Australia the same. But good players come through bad patches and top players stand up and perform when it matters.
Alan, what do you want to see from the team in Adelaide? I'm talking about selection now. I mean, obviously, Broad and Anderson seems the biggest no-brainer of all time. Somebody's going to have to be left out. Do you leave out Jack Leach if you need a few overs of spin? Joe Root can do that. What are you thinking, Alan, for the team in Adelaide?
Well, just first of all, what Stewie is saying. Hi, Stewie. Still looking bronzed up. You've probably been down in the sun somewhere again.
If only.
You never changed, do you?
I've learned everything from you, my friend.
I'm made for Christmas, yeah.
No. As Stewie said, he knows Burns better than anyone. It was a bit like Sibley, and Sibley, I believe, has now gone back to remodel himself because that technique didn't work out. And I just wanted to say to Stewie, do you think Burns will try remodel his technique, or will stay the same, Stewie? Or
no, I think he'll stay the same. It's so important that his timings of his movements are spot on, and that his head obviously doesn't fall across to the offside, all these obvious things, which means his front foot goes miles in over to the off stump or outside off stump. And if he can just keep going up and down the crease or up and down with his head going towards the bowler, then I have no problems with how he plays. But this is what I'm talking about. When you're slightly out of sync, when you do have at times excessive movements, everything is exaggerated. But hopefully if he can bring his heart rate down for his first ball in Adelaide, and then, like with all these things, he gets a boundary or 2 away early, he's good to go. But the hardest thing in batting is the first 20 balls. If you survive the first 20, then you're in. But up until then, there are still question marks in your own head, and the bowlers are still thinking they've got a good chance.
Correct. Right. A team for Adelaide. Well, we knew Anderson was injured, so he couldn't play, if I'm correct. I mean, this is what I've been told. Am I correct?
Yeah, he had a calf. He obviously had the calf from the summer, but I also heard, and I don't know if everyone was aware, but he then tweaked it again early on in the tour. And because he had no match practice to really test it out on, they weren't going to gamble on him. But I don't know if everyone else is hearing that.
Lawrence, did you hear that, Lawrence?
Lawrence, is that?
Yeah,
that's what I was told from Australia.
They were worried about him, and they were worried about repeating the scenario at Edgbaston in 2019, where he bowled 4 overs and then limped out of the game and the series, and they didn't want that. And also his record at the Gabba isn't great, but Broad's was, so that was why it's surprised that Broad didn't play as well. The Anderson absence had a certain logic to it. The Broad absence just seemed plain weird.
It's staggering, that was.
So, Alan, Broad and Anderson back.
Well, Broad and Anderson, I don't know, is this going to be a pink ball game?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the ball is going to swing. I wouldn't play Wood. Now, you've got to... The problem with that level, all our bowlers are the same. You've got Wokes, you've got Anderson, you've got Broad, you've got what's his other name?
Robinson.
So and then who's the other fifth seamer?
Stokes.
You got Stokes, but there's one more in the squad.
Well, Overton. Squad, isn't it?
Overton. So we've got all the very same type of bowlers there, and what we've got to do is. Right now, of course, Leach. I would play Leach in Adelaide, but again, what Australia are going to do is they're going to go after him straight away. So he's going to have to be up for it, really. But I'd maybe, if you look at it with that oval with Adelaide pitch, it's not a quick wicket. It'll swing around. So, I mean, is it Robinson? Broad, Anderson, then you got Wokes. if we're going to play Wokes, but Wokes and Robinson. I mean, would you play 4 seamers, 1 spinner, but then you've got Stokes bowling, so you should have your 3 frontline seamers, and then you got Stokes, and then you got your spinner.
Alec, might you not play Wood because he is a point of difference?
Yeah, and again, I don't know, Lawrence is thinking as well, bring him in, but I personally, and it's easy when we're 10,000 miles away or whatever, I would leave Leach out for sure, because I think Root will do a good job, and obviously they've got some left-handers in their top order. I personally would leave out Wood at this stage as well, and I would go Broad, Anderson, Robinson, Wokes. Yes, they're samey, but with the day-night game, I think, one, you need accuracy at Adelaide, even though it's now drop-in pitches. But when twilight kicks in and under the lights, you need people who get some lateral movement. And I think those 4 do. And then with Stokes being that 5th seamer, and I'm not calling Stokes an out-and-out bowler here, but if he can just bowl 3 over spells, assuming his knee is okay, I then use him as the enforcer. I hate that term, but he can be the X factor. You've got 3 overs, running and bowl quick, which he can do if he knows he's just going to bowl short, sharp spells. And that's the way I would go, admittedly, again, haven't seen the pitch. We're sat here in winter and we're thousands of miles away, but that's the route I would go from here.
Lawrence, what's the feeling down under? I mean, it's a really good point, and we were talking about before we came on air. You go with the extra pace, Lawrence, of Wood, or do you go Stokes' ability to swing it because it's a day-night match with under the lights with the pink ball?
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, Australia have got a really good record at Adelaide in the pink ball games. You know, we all think it brings England into it, but England don't actually have a great record in pink ball matches. They beat West Indies in 2017. They've lost the next 3, sometimes by embarrassing margins, all out for 50-odd against New Zealand. Lost by 10 wickets against India and Ahmedabad in about 4 and a bit sessions. The problem, I mean, as Alec alluded to it there, Wood is the point of difference. Wokes may swing it and did bowl well at Adelaide 4 years ago. But if you have Wokes instead of Wood, you then have 5 and no Leach. You have 5 right-arm seamers of roughly similar pace. Australia would be, I think, quite happy if Wood didn't play. I mean, he and Robinson were the 2 best bowlers at Brisbane. You got Warner hopping around. He contributed to his rib injury. Stokes kind of finished it off, hitting him in roughly the same place. And Warner's a doubt for the second test. Wood will ruffle them. And I think you have to have, if you have a 5-man seam attack, you need a bowler who's going to ruffle them. I mean, that may be harsh on Wokes, who didn't bowl badly, but Robinson and Wood were the standouts from the first test. Broad and Anderson have to come in. Don't see how you can risk Leach after what happened. So look, these are the discussions England will face. They may get to Adelaide and say the pitch is incredibly flat. We do need a frontline spinner, but it'll take a big call after what happened to Leach in the first game. His confidence is in shreds at the moment.
And night time, isn't it? 2 sessions under lights, Lawrence. The likelihood of spinners bowling, I don't know what the record is there for spin, but 2 sessions under lights. I can't see why you'd play Leach when Root can do Root is a good bowler. I know it's hard when he captains as well, but his record with the ball is respectful enough, I would suggest.
Well, yeah, I agree.
I agree with you on Alec, especially the spinners we have.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's what options have you got?
And Alan, he's been thrown to the lions, so hasn't he? Because he's gone from biosecure bubble to biosecure bubble, bowling in the nets. I mean, the poor bloke doesn't know whether he's on foot or horseback.
I totally agree. I mean, I was in Sri Lanka when I was on that tour, and when he came in, and he bowled well, but I mean, he had the wickets to bowl at, really. But then at India, the same thing happened. But I think it's very difficult for the spinners, and especially Australia. And Australia, as you saw, will attack. They will attack Lee. If Leach plays again, they'll go straight for him and try hit him out of the park. And that's what they did in the last Test match.
Yeah. I think it was Lawrence. Did you write that? I think it was in the paper that Leach's record against left-handers as against right-handers, there's a marked difference. And Leach, when the pitch spins, he's a top bowler. When a pitch doesn't, I don't think he's got enough in his armoury to really ruffle top-quality batsmen.
Correct.
Yeah, I didn't write that, but I should have done.
Actually, I was giving you a pat on the back, sorry.
Yeah, and that's all right. I'll write it now. I mean, Leach bowled really well in in Asia, didn't he, earlier in the year, in Sri Lanka and India, got 28 wickets across those two series and was England's best bowler. But then England didn't pick him at all in the summer. So essentially, he's coming sort of blind into this. He came blind into the first test, as Mark said, in bubbles throughout the summer, like the rest of the team, undercooked out here. So it was a big ask. And then, of course, there are comparisons with Nathan Lyon, who ends up taking his 400th test wicket, takes 4 for to knock England over on the 4th morning, and suddenly the gap widens. And Justin Langer had said during the game that one of the big differences between the two teams is that Australia have a world-class spinner, and that sounded like a bit of a dig at Leach. But after what happened at Brisbane, it was hard to argue against it, really.
Especially when they knew if they got after Leach, Stokes hadn't played, had he, since, was it June or whatever, and therefore they had to bring the other two bowlers back into it. And just going back to that selection, if they play 5 seamers or not, if Woakes doesn't play, and I know bowlers are in the side to take wickets, batters are in the side to score runs, but Robinson would be 8, Wood 9, Broad 10, Anderson 11. After Butler's out at 7, you're starting the roller up.
Yeah, and Robinson, who actually was quite encouraging with the bat earlier in the English summer, doesn't seem to have found any form. Alec, I want to bring a little bit of entertainment here, because on our podcast, Inside the Tour, on Alan's tour, Alan, I think you had the last tour of rest days, and Francis Edmonds told us that in Adelaide, being the great wine country, you and the Australian team went to a winemaker's and had a fantastic Sunday, where, to quote Francis, you all ended up in the swimming pool, whether you wanted to get in or not.
Well, yes, we were all fairly religious in those days, in the 80s, and a lot of us had to go to church, and that's why we didn't play on the Sunday. No, it was amazing. I mean, in the early 80s, we never played on a Sunday. It was fantastic. And then we got invited, both sides got invited to the wineries, and we ended up on a full day's charge party, and then boys will report back on Monday for duty again, and off we go again, so 3 days and then a break, and then finish it off with another 2 days.
Brilliant. All those stories and more. Bundaberg rum story. I urge you to listen to Inside Tour Pod. David Gower's most foolish decision of his cricketing life was to try and take on Ian Botham drinking Bundaberg rum in the start of 86, 87. Ian Botham then arm wrestling a yachtsman from the British entry to the America's Cup. Alan tells the story about how they ended up in a table breaking contest as they fell through that. You didn't have rest days then, Alec, did you? 4 years later, you were playing serious cricket 5 days a week, I think.
Yeah, I had one rest day, and that was my first tour of the West Indies. Lammy was captain, actually. We played back-to-back test matches, Barbados, then Antigua. When Gucci busted his hand, Lammy took over. And am I right in saying, Lammy, we had a rest day? Was it after 1 day or 2 days in Antigua? I don't know if you remember. But we ended up out on a yacht. I know that on the rest day. Myself, Keith Medlicott, Nasser Hussain, someone else. You guys are telling off because we played beach cricket for an hour or 2.
And you all got bloody sunburned.
We were out in the sun practicing our skills. You were on the yacht sinking a couple of rums and thought that was fine. I wasn't going to argue with you.
I was on the beach by having a few runs while these guys were getting them burnt up playing bloody beach cricket. I gave them a good old bollocking for doing that.
Whereas, of course, Lawrence, you and I've been lucky enough to do it in the past, to go out to the wineries of Adelaide and all these places in the run-up, and no one tells us off or tells us we're in the wrong place.
No, it's an easy life being a journalist, isn't it? Actually, touring back then did sound a lot of fun. I think perhaps the guys on this trip could do with a day at the winery just to take their mind off the first test.
I think that's not a bad idea, Alan, is it actually? Because they're in COVID. It's been difficult. The cricket that anyone has played internationally in the past 18 months has been really hard. They could do with a night out team bonding just to let some steam off.
Yeah, you know what? The problem is, I've been through a similar thing. When we played in 90 against Australia, when we lost, we just kept on. There was no days off. They just kept on the same routine. The worse we got, the more we practiced. And eventually the guys were absolutely sick for, and I just believe, listen, what's happened, put it behind you, have a day or 2 off, and then come back, ready for it. And I think personally, I remember Atherton played in that series too, and he just said it's the same old routine. You have to change the routine. I don't think you can keep the people going the same way, especially in the environment with this bubble now. I could have never played in it. I mean, that I would have been gone a long time ago, because there's no chance I would have been staying in one of those bubbles. I would have been gone.
What you don't want, lad, you don't want what's sort of known in the game as naughty boy nets. Yeah, because there's nothing worse than that. If you want to have an option of training on, if a game finished in 4 days on that 5th day, but I'm with Lammy, clear your head. You're not going to become that great a player through having one extra net session. So if you can clear your mind, come in refreshed, looking forward to the 2 days of training before the next test, then go for it. Otherwise, your mind gets stale, your body gets stale, and you probably make the same mistakes as you did previously.
And also, Alec, I think a big thing, is also why the team do it is because the press will write, well, the England team have just lost a test match and they're down on the beach relaxing. Am I right? I mean, this is exactly.
Well, but the other thing you have to remember as well, and Pougatch here and Boothie said, if we trained when they could have had a day off, they don't get a day off either because they've got a report on it. So they may as well write badly. I get it. I'm with them. Just give them a day off, and then the media have a day off and everyone's happy. Work together.
Well, it used to, not anymore.
No, but on a serious note,
the reason we know you're on the beach is because we're there too. So, but
that's why I always used to take the yacht so you couldn't get on it.
Or the helicopter.
Alan, you also know, and David Gower tells us, on the pod at Inside Pod, you know what works for you. And Alex said it, naughty boy nets. In the run up to 86, 87, the first test, Mike Gatting tells us that he said to Ian Botham, do what you want to do. I want you to obviously be there, but do what you want to do. As in, I'm not expecting you to bat for 20 minutes or bowl for half an hour. I'd like you to talk to the kids on their first tour, the newbies on their first tour, like Chris Ford and Gladdy, who we speak to in a second. But you know what works for you. And that's the key, isn't it? So at this stage where they've practiced so much, there needs to be a bit of sort of the team management need to let the players take some personal responsibility as well. I'm guessing Rory Burns is going, I need to net. I need to find the rhythm that Alec's talking about. I need to net. I need half an hour, 45 minutes in the net. Joe Root probably doesn't. He's in great nick.
Yeah, I think the problem lies there is everyone's different. That 86, 87, right? I think with Gat and Embers and the management, what they did, and I think I said to you before, is they made a committee of 5 senior players that had toured. So myself, Gower, Botham, Dilly, Edmonds, all toured Australia. So we knew what Australia was about. So, and the big thing, I also recommended that Gower come on because he had just been dropped as captain. And let me tell you, you weren't going to get the best out of Gower if you just let him go along and just move along on his own. He would have been a disaster. And I think that was the great thing about the team with the management and everything. And with Ian Botham, because he can destroy a net, he'd be throwing ball. So they said, Both, come in, 10-minute net, 15-minute net, come and bowl for 10 minutes, have some fielding practice and piss off. So that was it. And no one even minded. We didn't want Both at the nets in any case because he was so disruptive.
All run by, of course, Mickey Stewart, Esquire, Alec, who said actually to us that the only way to get Ian Botham tired was to make him play 5-a-side. And even then, he would only stop playing 5-a-side when his Ian Botham's team was winning. And then your dad would say, right, in you go.
But that's it, as Lammy touched on it. It's understanding the individuals within the team. There's got to be, a team culture. But within that, you still want the individuals to get out of it what they need so that they go in prepared. And, how Lammy trained would be different to, say, as you say, how Mike Lafton trained and Nasser Hussain trained, or, further back in time as Beefy trained. As long as you know you're ready, so that if you succeed, you can say, well, that's because of my preparation. And if you fail, it was, well, I wouldn't have done anything different leading into that test match. And as long as you're honest like that, then it's just man management. Because at that level, at international level, you're not really going to be improving yourself, or a little technical thing here or there isn't going to be improved in the space of one net.
Lawrence, let's talk about the Australian team briefly, because this is not Langer, Hayden, Ponting, Martin, McGrath, Ward, Gillespie, is it? I mean, let's be honest, it's a good team, but it's not a team to keep everybody awake at night.
No, there are weaknesses there. Unfortunately, one of the weaknesses pre-series was apparently Travis Head, and he got 152 of 148 balls. But if you look at that top six, I mean, Warner at home is a totally different kettle of fish from Warner away. Loves the flat pitches, averages about 60 in Australia. Smith and Labuschagne are, in the top three in the rankings behind Root. So those three are big guns. But then the rest of the batting, despite what Head did, you'd think England have got a way in there. The bowling's outstanding, but Hazelwood will miss the second test. He was the guy who inflicted the duck on Root on that chaotic first morning in Brisbane and has an outstanding record with the pink ball. So there's a slight chink there for England possibly to exploit. Jai Richardson might be coming in. He hasn't played a test for sort of nearly 3 years. So, look, it's not an all-time great Australian team. It's a very good team with some very good, sort of handful of very good performers. But it all is not lost for England. If they can sort of draw on the good moments in the first test, the bowling of Wood and Robinson, the partnership of Root and Milan, then, they can have a crack. And if they pick the right team and do the right thing at the toss, you never know. I mean, I'd still fancy Australia, but you just never know.
Alan, what do you think when you look at this Australian team?
I agree with Boothie. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not like, wow, we're just going to get rolled over. If our guys can perform to what they can do, then we've got a chance. But we've got to play as a proper team, and everyone's got to come to the party. And then Rooty's got to be calling the right decisions, and we've got to get the right side. If we get the right side and all those things go together, we've got a chance of beating them, especially in Adelaide with this pink ball.
Alec, how difficult is this? Because you and Alan have been in that situation when you've lost the first test, and it's very easy in Australia. Of course, it's happened 3 of the last 4 tours there that you lose at the Gabba, and then before you know it, you've been bulldozed, and Christmas is miserable because the Ashes have gone.
It is tough. Coming from one down in any series is going to be tough, but none more so against Australia in Australia. But what's happened's happened. So go into this game with the positive mindset. Take all the negativity away, and you almost become very much that enclosed camp to make sure that you as individuals and your teammates are ready to go and look what you can do, not look what you can't do. Be aware of the opposition. Jai Richardson, if he plays, is a serious cricketer. I don't know if many of you have seen him, but he's a quality cricketer. He's only, 5'9", 5'10", I think, Lawrence, but he swings it at good pace. He obviously won't have the bounce of Hazelwood. And if they go with Michael Neser instead, well, he's just got 5 for Australia A against the Lions. And he's had experience of bowling in England with Glamorgan this year. So he's a serious cricketer too. So whoever comes in, Richardson or Neser, England will still have to show massive respect to them. But it comes back to dealing with the new ball. Before the series started, when I was talking to you, Poogers, whoever handles the new ball best will come out on top. And by that, I mean, can we make early inroads into Exposure, Smith and Labuschagne and whoever early on and not go in? We don't want to see Smith going in at 200 for 2. Can we get him in at 30 for 2? And the same, we don't want Root going in at 30 for 2. Can we get him at 150 for 2 when the ball's softer and batting's easier?
We will see. Alec, thank you very much, Steve. We'll let you go because what we're going to do is we're going to speak to Gladstone Small in a moment, but we want to talk about, prostate cancer now, actually, and the raising of the awareness for it. So we're going to do that little section now. Alec, thank you very much. I know you'll be up early, staying up late. Actually, the Adelaide's rather good for us at home, isn't it? We get the last session, don't we, over breakfast? So that's good. Alan, let's just talk about the really important stuff tonight, which is prostate cancer and the awareness of it as well, and how you have found the whole last few months. Do you just want to give us some talk us through that, because this is really important to get the message across to men?
Yeah, Mark, I think I've been involved with sort of prostate cancer for about 12 years. A great friend of mine had his prostate removed. And every second year, we used to do a dinner and raise money and try create the awareness. But I don't think it really got across to everyone. And I had that little feeling that, I may get cancer. I may get prostate cancer. It was in the back of my mind. So I was getting checked up then, regularly having your PSA done, once a year and coming. But your PSA is only an indicator. It's not, it doesn't tell you if you've got it. It gives you an indicator. And when I, during lockdown, my PSA went up a little bit, and then I got retested again, and it gone up again. And then by August, they said, you've got to do something about it. So I was very lucky enough. I'm with Vitality, so I managed to see the three best guys involved, due to the fact that we had been with these guys over the years before, and I could go and see them. Professor Waxman, Professor Prokar, and Professor Simon Hughes. So these guys were absolutely excellent. So when I went in, I had all the things done, the MRI scans and everything like that. And then eventually they didn't pick up anything, and they said biopsy. So I went and had a biopsy, and that's where they found it. And, it was a Gleason 4-6, fairly active. And I had a chance. They said, do you want your prostate out? We can do that. But if you have it out, there is a small chance that they could leave a bit back in, and that could be bad. Or you can have radiotherapy, and that should kill 80% of it. And then my results went off again, and they came back and said the Gleason 4 they had found is really, really active, quite an aggressive one, and they think I need to take hormones. So I then wasn't very keen on the injection, being injected with the hormones, because it does everything to your body, and it still affected me now. But I went on the tablet route. So eventually I was between my three guys that I was chatting with. We all agreed that we go on the hormone tablets for 6 months. So I've come off in March. But as I said earlier, my PSA has gone down to 0.3. So something's working, so something's happening there. So my big thing is why I went public is due to the fact I'd lost some great Bob Willis and Hendricks and all these guys. There's even other personal guys that I've lost to prostate cancer. And because the guys were too embarrassed and they had a macho, we don't go and get tested. And you know what? That's why I went public. And I try to get it across to everyone to tell them, guys, forget about your macho, or forget about, just go and get tested. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's why I went public with it. And you know what? You know how many people have come back to me to say, thank you very much. We have been tested. Some have got prostate cancer and some haven't. And you know what? That's all I'm trying to do is create this awareness. And I think it's 1 in 8 people, 1 in 8 guys in the UK have got it. And this is what we've got to get. Look at breast cancer. They got it out so well. They got it to, the women took it in their stride and went and they really promoted and pushed it and made the awareness. So I think it was absolutely brilliant what they did. And we should follow. We should stop our shyness or our macho and we can't be tested, but embarrassing or something, or too embarrassed to do that. So that's all I want to do. And Prostate, Cancer UK are doing a fantastic job. And, we want to help them. And they'll be raising lots of money because they need the money for research. And, if you take 10 years ago, there was nothing. My friend just had to have it taken out. There was nothing else. But now there's all different options you can have. So that's how I am at the moment.
Well, we're going to reinforce that point before we finish in about 15 minutes' time. Gladstone Small's joined us. Was also on Allan's 86-87 tour. Took 5 wickets at the MCG. Caught the winning catch as well. We'll come to the cricket bit, Gladstone, in a second. But what's your own understanding? What we're talking about now, prostate cancer?
Yeah, obviously, as Alan just mentioned, of obviously all of our lots of buddies and great mates and fit, lovely, wonderful guys. But listen, this thing that this cancer, it doesn't, it no, it doesn't. It doesn't pick, it doesn't select. It's not very selective. It's just anyone is at risk. Everyone's at risk. And I remember back a few years ago now working really closely or quite closely. I was part of a campaign that Prostate Cancer UK did, because I'm a black man, and the fact of the matter is that us black guys, I think it's one in four of us is at more likely to have prostate cancer than the normal the regular white guys and stuff. So it's really important that everyone gets that message, and the campaigns and the research that is done to really get to the heart of this matter it's crucial. I'm personally, my old man, my dad, who's a guy who was never ill, never missed work, never complained. Oh, was a really healthy, late, 88-year-old man. When he kept it, when he finally succumbed to being ill, and he was taking pills and all this sort of stuff to try and repress the pain. And when we finally got to it, it was too late for him. He'd had it in the system for quite a few years and didn't tell anyone about it. So he was too proud. And it just you just cannot be these days. Obviously, the modern medicine and how if you can get to these matters, yes, they're serious matters, but if you can get to them early enough and get the right care and attention and detail, you can have life. You can have a good life if you do the right thing. So that's the message to everyone. And I know from my point of view is obviously saying to lots of proud black guys up there, listen, guys, this thing doesn't differentiate. Get yourself sorted. Get tested early.
Thank you, Gladstone. This is the key bit. It's the most common cancer in men. So it's really important that anyone with concerns about the disease who wants to find out more checks out the 30-second risk checker at the Prostate Cancer UK website. So go to the Prostate Cancer UK website. There's a 30 seconds, that's all it is, 30-second risk checker. And then you can make an informed choice as to what steps are the right choice to make, because you can be treated, you can be saved. And men at higher risk, once you've had a look at that risk checker, should speak to their GP. Let's hear from three of England's test team who've got some messages for Alan.
Hi everyone, Jack Leach here. Just want to say thank you so much for all your support back home. We hear you're watching through the night, so we really appreciate that. We hope to put on a great performance for you. We can't wait to get started. And Lammy, all the best, mate. Hope you're doing all right. Cheers.
Hi everyone, Jimmy Anderson here. I just wanted to say I hope you have a great time watching the test match. Well done for getting up early and watching it. Hope we can put on a show for you and a good performance and get that win. And to Lammy, just wanted to wish you all the best, mate, and send him my love. Take care.
Hi, it's Josh Butler. I hope you're all having a great time. Thank you so much for getting together to give us all the support. Lammy, wishing you all the best. Hope you keep him well and enjoying the cricket.
Plenty of cricket left, of course, in the series. Let's hear from one more person. Let's hear from Alan Border. Now, we were speaking to Alan Border about our podcast before you, Allan Lamb, had made your diagnosis public. So here's Alan Border.
Heard that. So, look, what a good man. We've known each other for a long time. I'm just trying to think of the first time I ran into him. It was, probably 77, 78. He was trying to qualify for England status at the time, and we played a game for, was it Derek Robbins 11, something like that. And that's the first time I met Lammy, and we just hit it off straight away. And it's sad to hear that news, but I know what he's like. He'll do it with a smile on his face and be annoying everyone, and particularly the nurses. I feel sorry for them. What a good man. And I'll send my best wishes now, but I'll follow up later on. So stay strong, Lammy.
Great stuff.
That's nice to hear, isn't it, from your old rival?
Yeah, it was right. 1977, we played in the Derek Robbins at Hastings. Amazing.
That's brilliant. Look, we will reinforce those messages at the end, but we've got Gladdy with us. So let's just talk about England winning the Ashes, and we'll have a quick reflection on the second test with Gladdy as well. We haven't mentioned him yet, Gladdy. You talked brilliantly about him on our podcast series about the 86, 87 tour. We haven't mentioned Elton John yet. I don't know whether he's in Australia this time. Elton John all those years ago.
He'll be the only Englishman who'll be there. I think they're not allowing many of them in. So perhaps the what's Lord Botham's title, Lammy? What's Botham's title?
I don't know how much English wine he's going to be selling to Australia. Lord Botham. I mean, the ambassador,
the envoy, trade envoy.
I mean, there's a trade. I saw a picture of him. My goodness, he slimmed down. He must be in the gym, I think.
They should change that title to wine drinking envoy.
Yeah.
Lawrence,
you'll probably bump into him. He's got rather large. I think he may have swallowed one of the wine vats.
You win the Ashes, Gladdy, and then Elton John is DJing for you all night in his Melbourne suite.
Well, that's how we rock and roll back. That's how we rock and roll back then. I mean, it's a good job. It's a good job that we didn't back in those days in the 80s. We didn't have things like social media and Twitter and all this sort of Zoom, all this sort of stuff. But I remember, Lammy, we had to do that Christmas Day. We had to do something. We had to stay in our fancy dress outfit to do something with Noel Edmonds' house party.
Yes.
Remember what was your letter that Christmas Day dress? What was your Lindsay and
Sugar Plum Fairy?
She was a Sugar Plum Fairy.
Jesus. Elton thought I looked wonderful. But I got to say, one of the first guys to phone me was Elton John. Was incredible. Wow. And what a lovely man. He said, anything I could do to help, please stay in touch. We've got to catch up. So it just shows you all those old friends that you've met on tours, that they still, you're still in touch. So, I think probably Glad will agree with me. Yeah, when we toured, we never really stayed in our rooms. We got out and met the people, went down to sort of the wine farms or went down to the beach, went fishing, or we went out and looked at the country, because that's what it's about when you tour.
It was proper touring.
Yeah, go and have a look at the country. And I think this is what, I don't think they have the time now to do that. But, we were lucky we had it in our day. And
Lammy, that 86 tour, remember we started off in Brisbane. We started off in Brisbane. For our warm up, our 10-day warm up was at Brisbane, and then we went up to Bundaberg where they grow rum.
We lost to the Cane Cutters 11.
The Cane Cutters. We lost to the Bundaberg rum drinkers, and that was where I remember that we had to go to a reception where obviously we mentioned but the Lord Botham, the wine envoy, and he would drink anything that had anything that says alcohol on it. And then the other guy, the other maverick in the team was Mr. Gower, David Gower, who's from the other spectrum. He's more champagne and fine wine. So after this day on a session trying to drink rum with Beefy, by the time we got to the Lord Mayor's reception, Gower was totally off his face. He was
speaking Swahili.
He couldn't stand up. And unfortunately, at this reception, the said mayor of Bundaberg he obviously, unfortunately, he was sort of his follically challenged, should we say, and all you can hear from the back from a drunk David Gower trying to whisper. But he wasn't obviously whispering. He was saying, "Beef, he's got a wig on. Beef, I'm sure it's a wig."
Who's that idiot?
And then that tour that we started in Bundaberg, which is right up in the northeast of Queensland, And then they sent us down to New South Wales. We went over to Perth, over to Tasmania. You know, they made us trek around the country, and then back to Brisbane for the first Test match. But we embraced it. We lost to everyone.
You embraced it, and Gladdy, you embraced the ball at deep square leg that won the Ashes, didn't it? Who was bowling? Phil Evans was bowling. Merv Hughes slog swept it straight to you, and you then did one of the stupidest things, Glad, you've ever done in your life, didn't you?
Yeah, I know. But back in the day, I mean, memorabilia was, listen, I had 5 Australian wickets in my locker, so that was enough for me. But actually, going back to Lammy, Lammy, obviously the wives, by the time, like, we weren't allowed to take, I mean, obviously there was a bit of conflab in this tour about wives and girlfriends. We weren't allowed to take wives and girlfriends for the first 6 weeks of the tour.
And if they came, we had to pay for them. So that was a whole tour wage gone.
But that day, Lammy, I don't know if you remember that last day. There was the Davis Cup was being played in Melbourne the same day as the last day of the Test match, and Lindsay, your Mrs. Lindsay, and my fiance at the time was Australian girl, and I think it was Susie Embry. Rather than watching the cricket, rather than watching us beat the Aussies, those 3 girls pissed off to Kooyonga to watch the tennis, to watch the tennis players. That's how much support we got from that lot.
I know. And she used to drive at Wimbledon, my wife. So there you are. I mean, can you believe it?
But Gladdy, just to say, you then threw the ball in the crowd. So a bit of memorabilia you chucked into Rosette.
Well, it was one of those ones. I mean, I took the catch, and Phil Edmonds was someone who was just like taking the piss all the time. He used to get bored, Henry. You know, he thought he was a smart guy, so he'd always try and play games with you. So he said to me, right, Stoney, you make sure you move and mark an X, keep moving and mark an X to where you're going. And I marked this X, and next ball, Merv Hughes only had 1 shot. There was a slog to cow corner. And he hit this ball, very next ball, and I took the catch, steeple, hard catch in a swirling wind, I must admit, but I steadied myself.
It wasn't a bloody break the wind then, man.
And I was standing directly above the X that Henry told me to make on the ground. And I just threw the ball. It landed in the stand at the MCG. So for the last 35 years, some dog in Melbourne has been chewing on that ball, on a kookaburra ball. And then we started partying.
Oh, brilliant. I think we should end there, Alan, because we should end with Elton John DJ for you, didn't he, after you won the Ashes?
Yeah, no, he was absolutely brilliant because, he loved it. In those days, anyone came into our dressing room, we invited. No really security. I mean, just come in. Elton came in, and he was staying at the same hotel as us. You remember, Glad? The Hilton. And, Elton was just like brilliant. So anytime, he could throw a party for us, he threw a party for us. I mean, that was it. He didn't believe that the seafood was so good in Australia. So he imported all from New Zealand. We had a party with all bloody New Zealand seafood. Can you believe it?
And that night, Beefy could only, back in '86, Beefy had bought this portable CD player. When they were on the original portable CD players. Yeah. But he only had like 3 CDs because they were like 50 quid a pop at the time. And so when Elton came in and saw these 3 CDs, he thought, what's this? What's that? Is that music? So he sent his driver off, and half an hour later, his driver came back with 2 suitcases full of CDs. And then Elton proceeded to be our DJ. So the party. We started phase 2 for the next 6 hours with Elton being DJ then.
Listen, thank you everybody. Lawrence, thank you very much for getting up so early. Go for a run along Bond. Oh, it's still dark actually. Have a sleep and then run along Bond there. I know you're quarantining. So thank you. We really appreciate you getting up early and enjoy the series.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Gladdy, thank you very much. Quick one, Gladdy. Quick one from you. Adelaide Test. Obviously, Broad and Anderson. From a bowling point of view, what are you looking for?
Well, listen. I thought the bowlers did okay. I mean, if if they had the luck that their bowling deserved in the Aussies' first innings, that lead would have been probably less than 100 runs, and the test match would have been different. But obviously, the second test in Adelaide is going to be the pink ball test. So surely Anderson and Broad, they can't be tired, because if they've been doing bugger all for in the last week or so in Brisbane, obviously yes, these guys would have been doing lots of bowling. Listen, I just found it astonishing, quite frankly, that we ended the test match on that pitch in Brisbane, as green as it was, without at least one of our two senior bowlers. So that astounded me, how that decision. But hey, I don't rate this Australian batting attack much. I think actually between us and them, I'll have a ball at both of them, both of teams, to be honest. Even now, with no knees whatsoever. So I think our bowlers will be looking forward to getting stuck into the Australian batting. We just got to get more runs on the board. It's always a batsman's fault, Pougas, who loses test match. These pretty boy batsmen. They don't.
Hey, settle down.
Brilliant, Gladdy. Thank you very much. And Alan, thank you. It's really important. I'm gonna reiterate everything we've talked about in terms of how men can check themselves. But as you've said, go and do it. It's simple as that. This could save your life. Go and do it.
Correct. Well done, Mark. Thank you very much. So please, guys, go and do it. Go and get tested now.
Alan, thank you. Absolute pleasure. So here we go to finish with. Prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men. So anyone who has any worries, go to the Prostate Cancer UK website and have a look at the 30-second risk checker. 30-second risk checker. More information or donate. The website is prostatecanceruk.org and on social media at Prostate UK. Many thanks to Allan Lamb for his time, for his honesty, for telling us men exactly what to do. Thank you to Lawrence Booth for getting up early in Sydney, Gladstone Small, Alec Stewart, all our friends at Prostate Cancer UK, to Audie, Jonathan Overend and his team at 9419. Let's hope for a competitive second test in Adelaide. And please, if you haven't, have a listen to Alan's stories, to Gladstone Small stories, David Gower, Mike Gatting, Ian Botham, Alan Border, all of them, all 8 episodes now available inside the tour, The Ashes of 86-87 at Audie. This is Mark Pougatch saying thank you for your company. Enjoy the second test.